Thanks for joining me today at Learnwake. My name is Brandon Judd, and I'm responding today to a video analysis request that has been submitted by one of our Learnwake users named Peter. And this is a Toeside back roll attempt that he's looking to get analyzed. And I know it says front roll attempt here. I think that was just a typo. Sometimes we get a little mixed up on that. In your submission, it's correct. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go over this Toeside back roll. It's a one-wake Toeside back roll. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go over a few things that you're doing incorrect, a few things that I really like that I'm seeing that I'd like you to continue to do. And then I'll explain and kind of show you some examples of some correct one-wake Toeside back rolls and then how to take it wake to wake from where you're at. And then we're going to talk a little bit about your timing, your edge, and how this functions for you. So uh, let's look at your submission and see what comments you had, just so we're all up to speed here. So Peter says, here's today's Toeside back roll attempt. I'm trying to focus on popping with a straight body, waiting for the pop, and getting some height before looking back to the water to land. This is my one arm, one wake attempt at 19.5 miles an hour with a short line at 57 feet. Any advice would be appreciated. Thanks. Thank you, Peter, for submitting that. That helps us understand what you're thinking and kind of get in your head. You mentioned the one-armed, one-wake toe-side back roll. That is the one-handed toe-side back roll. We have a video on that that I'm sure you're referencing. So for those just joining us, you can look for that one-handed toe-side back roll video, and looks like he's pretty much halfway through that video here, learning that one-wake toe-side back roll. So thank you for submitting this, and thanks for following some of our advice. I think this has served you really well, and I think you're going to be really quick to land this. So let's get started. This Toeside back roll looks good, so let's take a peek at it and have everyone else be able to kind of see this thing all the way through. So we have a pretty solid Toeside back roll. Looks like it's a little over rotated, kind of slipping out over your heels, and then you're also turned a little front side on the landing. So those symptoms of landing over-rotated and landing a little front side, those are just symptoms of a problem on your approach. So we're going to talk about the problem on your approach, but before we do that, I just want to cover some of your settings since you mentioned them. So first thing is your line length. It looks like you're a little short for a one-wake attempt. That 57 feet is pretty narrow. So what happens is you're landing on this uphill portion of the second wake, and that uphill portion is going to make it feel like you need to put the brakes on and put your feet out in front of you to catch it. Otherwise, if you land on your toe side edge, it feels like you get kind of stuck and tripped up. So if you come in any shorter than that, you kind of land in this big turbulence of whitewash here from the rooster tail prop wash. So in order for you to take off and land kind of in this sunspot here, which is ideal right before the center line, it's a little, because it's kind of downhill still, like the downhill side of the wake would be. The problem with that is that at this line length, it's just going to be so hard because there's not much room there. So I would let your line out just a little further, just enough to where you have more room here and you're not getting stuck. But again, that if you wanted to go wake to wake, this wouldn't be a bad wake to wake length. 55, 57 feet is fine if you're wanting to do your first wake to wake attempt on a short rope. So you're doing good on that. I would just lengthen it out, and it's going to make everything way easier for you. Additionally, you mentioned that it's a one-handed toe side back roll, and this back arm, this back hand here, it's silhouetted, so it's hard for me to see, but it looks like this little white spot is your back hand, and it looks like it's still on the handle. So this tells me that you're starting out two-handed and then becoming one-handed on takeoff. That is going to make it difficult for you because it's going to change the line tension. Your front arm, you can see, is a little bent. When you're holding onto your back arm, obviously your front hand is going to be closer to the handle than your back hand is going to be. So what happens is when you have two hands on the handle, there ends up being kind of a bend in your front arm, and then your back arm is a little straighter. which is why we have people do the one-handed thing, because you end up relying a lot on your back arm when you edge toe side. And that is going to cause you to spin front side a little bit if you're not used to that. So this is helping you just get used to the flip without being twisted like that. So I would start out one-handed. I'd also start out like here, at least half of that approach. I know it seems like it's impossible, um, but it works. So what this is going to do is right now, see how you're like leaning toward the wake? If you had that same lean right here, then you wouldn't start flipping too early, which would mean that you're going to land on your toes instead of on your heels. So we'll just look at that. So by the time you get here, you've kind of flattened off. And then when you get to the wake, I know you're trying to be really patient, but your board is still about halfway in the wake and you're already at like a 45-degree angle. You're already flipped a decent amount into it. Um, so I would, it's not bad. Like I said, you just barely over rotated. So I would start edging closer to the wake and start edging completely one-handed. Like don't even edge out two-handed. Edge out one-handed, edge back in one-handed into a one-handed toe side back roll, and then land here. Um, this is causing you to come across the wakes too far, land open front side, and then by the time your board hits the water, you're a little over rotated. So that'll solve all those problems. Is lengthening the rope out, starting closer and one-handed, and I think you'll start landing these pretty quick. So let me have you take a look at this. I like doing these. This is really fun. I just kind of do it to warm up and get used to the wake and just kind of play around a little bit. Um, this this was during a boat test that we were doing for Wakeboarding Magazine, and I was just kind of testing the wake. It was through some choppy water, as you can see, and so I was just kind of having fun. But it ended up putting it in the review just as one of our little clips here. So the problem is I don't have the beginning to show you before this, but this you can see where my trail was. I like to pump up and down the wake once or twice, and then go into a nice solid final pump that I end up doing a Toeside back roll out of. So you can look here if you can see closely the arc. You can see I came down the wake and then back up the wake. So this is like a 3-foot approach. I mean, it's really nothing. So like I said, you can go real short with your approach. And then I just stand really tall through the wake here. Like I haven't even flipped yet. It doesn't really look like I'm going to do anything. Um, Still, my spine is pretty upright, and my tail is just barely still in the water. Um, and then now my board's officially off the water, and I'm still pretty upright, and I just look to the sky, um, and I push my hips forward. And that little bit of push off the tail, I just stand real tall. It really feels like I just kind of step on the tail for this one. And notice I keep the board pointed the direction I'm going, and I stay one-handed the whole time. Um, and then I just look through the sky to the landing, and I can kind of just relax for the rest of this. And then you can see where I land. I land right in between this prop line here, and the takeoff wake. So there's this like downhill little pocket that you can kind of land in and be stable, um, and absorb your landing, and everything is nice and easy there. So I'll just have you take a look at that again. A little more fluid, just a nice, solid, tall, standing tall. It's all the edge and a little bit of a standing tall kind of back leg push. Um, and the rest of it just kind of happens. I don't really go crazy high with it. Um, it's more that I go up just enough to allow myself to rotate around my center mass. And when I'm upside down, right here, my center mass, like if you look at when I'm carving, like my center mass is not too far below this. It was maybe right here. So my center mass went up maybe a foot or two, but my lower body swung around me. So don't feel like you're not going to make it around if you don't edge really far away from the wake and run at the wake really hard. You can just load it up right at the wake, stand tall off your back foot, and be really patient. It sounds weird, but the longer you wait to flip, the more pop you'll get. So if I was, because right here the wake is starting to kind of push the most. If I was already leaning back really far, it would just kick the board out from under me and it wouldn't send my upper body up very high. So I only go up a couple feet, but then I'm able to have just enough loft and airtime to rotate directly around my center mass. So that's really important to know, to just be able to trust this trick. And it happens pretty quick, but based on your flip here, you're already over rotating. So I think you could totally do exactly what I did, where you start kind of at the bottom of the wake, just stand tall with one hand, and recreate that same pop, and you'll land right here, and it'll be real comfortable for you. So that being said, let's talk about the wake to wake version. So this is Ben Greenwood on a Toeside back roll, um, and he comes in with a pretty normal approach edge. He doesn't go crazy short or crazy long, just pretty normal. And then he really loads it up right through the bottom of the wake here. So it gets real tall, really loaded, and stands tall all the way through the wake. And then watch what happens to the handle. This is key because once you get that Toeside back roll comfortable, where you can land right here every time, um, then you can start doing it two-handed. When you're two-handed, it's going to load up a lot down this back arm. Like I mentioned, your front arm will be bent, your back arm will be a little bit straighter, and you're going to want to flip directly around that. What's going to happen is when you load it up hard, it's going to pull this back shoulder and try and make you face the boat. Um, to counteract that, you have to do something with the handle, and it becomes second nature once you do these a lot. But watch what Ben does with the handle. As soon as he leaves the wake, he pushes the handle down and toward his front hip. Like he pins it on the outside of his left thigh. Um, and then he's able to just look up and around and spot his landing. And you'll notice he doesn't let go of the handle until he's already completely upside down and can see his landing. And he uses both hands to kind of jam the handle in his front hip. You'll see he's already kind of squared front side up to the boat, and it does that pretty aggressively. But then once you spot the water, you want to let go of your front hand, or your back hand, sorry, and then take your front hand and push it back toward your hip. You'll watch how he keeps this just pinned down at his side, in front of his left hip, and that helps him stay edging with the board pointed toward shore instead of staying twisted front side. So just so you know, it's not a fluke. I'm going to show you Kyle Schmidt doing the exact same thing. Again, watch the handle. Um, he's going to edge nice and hard through the wake, stand nice and tall. As soon as his board leaves the water, he pushes the handle down at his front hip. Like it's super obvious when you look for it. So it's up high here, just normal. Um, his back arm is relaxed and straight, and it's going to naturally put the handle in your ribs right here when you're relaxing your arms. So right here, don't worry about like keeping it high or pushing it anywhere. Just do a normal loaded toe side back roll. As soon as you leave the water, you want to push the handle back down toward your front hip, um, and that will help you stay squared up. And then as soon as you spot the water again, you can let go with your back hand, and then you want to keep the handle here in front of your front hip, um, on that side of your body so that you can land. I mean, look how much he's anticipating landing over his toes. Like you almost have to under rotate this trick to land on your toe side edge, and then you want to keep that nose of the board pointed towards shore so that you can land on edge and continue traveling. Um, if that makes sense. It's really easy to over twist and over rotate this thing. Um, Another thing to note, when you go wake to wake, um, Kyle, his board is impacting the water right here. Look how much he still hasn't rotated. Like this was about the lean you had when you were taking off. Um, you're, I mean, if he was standing on the ground, he would fall over. That's how much he's leaning over his toes when he first impacts the water. Because as soon as you land on the downside of the wake, the board is not going to stop traveling until you hit the bottom of the wake. So the board's still going underneath him, underneath him, underneath him until right there at the bottom of the wake, and he still wants it to be behind his chest. You want your chest to be over your toes. You don't want your board to be in front of you. So it really does feel like you're gonna under rotate this trick when you're spotting the landing. Um, it's very common to over rotate. So be okay with landing on a nice hard toe side edge with one hand. So hopefully that helps. And then the way to do that when you go wake to wake, the bigger you go, the higher you go, the longer you have to wait until you flip. Uh, this is a really good example of the extreme version of that statement. So this is JD Webb doing an indie toeside back roll. When he grabs the board, it balls him up, which makes him flip faster. So he has to wait even longer. And then he did this off the double up and goes really high, which means he has tons of air time. So he has to wait so long. I mean, it's crazy how long he waits, but it's a perfect example of how the toeside back roll should function. Um, this being an indie toeside back roll, it's a little different than yours, but I just wanted this to prove a point so you could see it. So he stands really tall, um, really upright and tall. Like his head isn't kicked back yet, even though he's mostly through the wake here. And then he goes up, 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 and gets the board. I mean, his upper body is still upright. He has not flipped yet. Granted, this is a grabbed back roll, so it's a little different in function than yours. Yours is going to be hips first, not hips behind you like that. But it's crazy how high he is. He's going to flip. He has not flipped yet. Um, and then right here, he flips, and then he's finished the flip right here already. So it's up, quick flip. This flip happens really fast, which is why I was able to do it, off of just a reentry basically. And then he drops out of it all the way out of here. Um, so it this is the extreme version of how long you can wait. So stand tall, wait, 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 flip. Okay, now drop out of it, drop out of it, drop out of it. And then look what he does to the handle when he comes out of this flip. Watch where he pins it really low and like behind his front knee to keep himself in the right position to land. Um, so that's key. Again, I may have overdone it here with some of these examples, but I think you're going to progress so quickly through this back roll once you get that one-handed one wake back roll dialed. I think you're going to progress so quickly through these that I just wanted to give you all the steps you needed, because I think you're right there. We just got to slow the flip down, adjust some settings like I mentioned, and then once your confidence is up with that, start going wake to wake. Thanks again for submitting the video, and good luck.